Hey, it's Tim.
And it's Amy from GoWithLess. Thanks for joining us here today. In today's video, we're going to share the completely crazy story of us voting for the first time as nomads. There's a lot going on in this story, so I hope you'll stay tuned to the whole video.
Every Wednesday here on our channel, we come out with a new video, typically talking about our early retirement or our nomadic lifestyle. In 2015, we left our careers in our late 40s and retired early. And in January of 2020, we sold our home and became full-time nomads. If you're new to our channel, please be sure and subscribe and ring that little notification bell. Also be sure and give us a thumbs up.
That's right. So in January 2020, we sold our Coloradan home and we established what's called a domicile in Texas. Now, until then, for almost 2 decades, we had been Colorado voters, and Colorado sure made it easy to vote.
Yeah, and that domicile process, part of that is we registered to vote in Texas. And so when you register to vote here in the United States, you can only register to vote in one specific place. And so our registration went away in Colorado and we registered to vote in Texas.
That's right. Now, we are part of what's called the Escapees RV Club. There are over 10,000 people just like us who also do not have a home. And that's a little tricky. And we've done a whole entire video about our mail service, which is what Escapees is. I'm going to link that up at the end of this video as well as down below. If you are interested in this kind of topic and you haven't seen that, make sure you see it because this RV club has been extremely helpful. But they also advocate for us to have the right to vote somewhere. And what that means is that we are voters out of Polk County, Texas. Now here we have this easy breezy time in Colorado, but Texas has different rules.
So before we get into how it's a little different in Texas to vote, we're also going to say that this video is nothing about politics. We are not talking about the way you should vote or anything to do with, so anything to do with politics is off limits for us, as well as we would ask that please don't have anything about politics in the comments. This is simply about the process that we went through in order to actually vote in Texas.
Now, I am also going to say that we have a lot of friends who are outside of the country, so U.S. citizens outside the country, whether they're expats or travelers like we are, and they have had a very, very easy time of voting. Some of them have been able to scan, email, fax in their ballots. So easy. We have found that not to be the case for us at all, and it seems as though it is harder to vote as people in the United States, not in your county, than out of the United States, which I think is kind of crazy.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Something else that we want to elaborate on is that this is just our experience in this one county. It seems that every county in the country may be just a little bit different when it comes to voting. Certainly, every state has its own set of rules, and then depending upon the county where you're registering to vote, it seems like there may be another set of rules in that county that elaborate on whatever the state has in place. So it's very different depending on where you are here in the country.
Tim and I have always voted. We voted in all the presidential elections, in the midterm elections, so this is very important, and we want to make sure that our vote counts. So I got on the ball back in April to make sure that we understood and had all the I's dotted and everything to make sure that we were going to be able to vote. So back in April I reached out to the county clerk? The county clerks, and I was recommended to do that via email. And so I sent an email to understand, like, what's the process? We're now new voters here, and we want to make sure we're voting in this election. What is the process? Well, I never heard back. About a month later in May, I picked the ball up again. I said, like, hey, like, just didn't get my question answered, still wanting to make sure I understand. And I was told, kind of briefly in an email, that we were going to need to be filling out an absentee, a request for an absentee ballot. So we kind of knew that back in May we needed to fill out this request, and we're going to get real into the meat of this because there was some challenges with that. But we kind of like let it lie there for a few months then until probably August.
Yeah, and by design, so the way it's set up, this should be just easy breezy. And so we'll talk about why it was a little more complex for us. But the way it's designed is that basically what you do is you send in this piece of paper that says, hey, I want to vote absentee because I'm going to be out of the county. You send that to the county clerk. And then when the ballots come out, they send your ballot to wherever you are. You vote, you send it back. Boom, you're all done. That's as easy as it's supposed to be. and that was not our experience.
And so a huge part of why that is hard is because Tim and I are on the move a lot, and we don't know exactly where we're going to be when at all times, and our plans change. So here it is, the middle of August, and we go ahead and first of all, we don't have a printer. So we had to get 30 miles away, about, I don't know, at least a 30-minute drive to go print out our ballots at the Office Depot. And we fill out not our ballots, our request for absentee ballot, just a request for a ballot. So we print those out, get those sent in, and we sent them in 2 different envelopes at an official postal box. So no problem. This should be easy.
No problem. So ultimately, once we sent those in, we called roughly a week later to see if they arrived. They didn't arrive. We called another week later to see if they arrived. They didn't arrive. I think
we were like
this
every 3
went on
days.
for basically a month. We're just, did this arrive? No. Did this arrive? No. And so ultimately we decided it's not going to arrive. It must have been lost in the mail. And the strange thing is, like Amy said, these were 2 separate envelopes. So it's not like one of them arrived and one of them didn't. Neither of our requests for an absentee ballot made it to Texas.
We have no idea where they are
Did it get
to this
lost
day.
in Washington? Did it get lost in Texas? Who knows? But nonetheless, they never arrived.
And here's the thing, is this was back in August when we sent it. Well, we had plans. We didn't know where. We were supposed to be in Maui. We didn't know where we were supposed to be. Many people had offered, hey, just send your ballot to me and I'll forward it on to you, which was really nice and lovely. We had some concern that we didn't know when our ballot would be mailed out from Texas, and then having a friend or family member send them to us and having it sent back to Texas to be recorded. There were some problems because we were supposed to be in Maui, and we knew that there might be some extra delays because we're kind of really far away. So that was like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? Where are we going to get our ballots sent?
So ultimately, we decided we had to send in another request, and so we filled out the paperwork again, and
with a different address.
With a different address. And so in the midst of filling out this paperwork, we called escapees, and we determined, or they actually told us that, hey, you don't have to necessarily know where you're going to be. There's a county 10 miles down the road where we have a P.O. box, and you can just have your ballot sent to this other county. We'll collect them up, and then we'll put it in your mailbox. We'll charge you $5 a ballot to do that, but nonetheless, because you're all over the place, what a great service that we didn't find out about until the final hour that this was actually an option for us. So we found out this was an option, and we went with that.
And here's something that you didn't mention, is that we aren't allowed to send ourselves the ballot. So we're not allowed just to send it to our normal address where everything else goes, because then you're in the county. So we had to send it to an out of the county address, which again, then we had to have it sent to someplace, which was sent to someplace else. So that made it really tricky. Now, our first stop, which was in Washington, where I mentioned we might be in Washington, we might be in Maui, but our friend in Washington, she's Canadian. She's in Vancouver and isn't able to get over the border because of the border closings. And so if our ballot was eventually delivered to Washington, it would still be sitting there to this day. So it's probably a good thing that that first one got lost in the mail because it had our Washington address on it, and we would have been kind of stuck then.
Yeah, it could have been difficult for us, certainly.
So thank goodness it was lost.
We might have had to stay in Washington through the election, potentially.
That's right, but we never knew if that old one would show up in the mail, and then we didn't know what address would come on there. So here we had this new P.O. box through our escapees, and we also had the original one that was lost in the mail with an address we no longer wanted. And we said, like, what would happen? We called them. We said, what would happen if our old thing ever showed up? Like, what address will you be using? And we never really got a good answer.
That's not true. They simply said it would just be discarded. That wasn't the message.
Is that what they said?
That's what I was told.
I thought they said it won't show up.
So if it shows up, if you already have your ballot, we were also concerned, is this going to be a problem? Like you're asking for 2 ballots or something like that. So I asked this question in the multiple times, in the multiple conversations we had with the folks at the county clerk's office.
They were very patient.
They were very patient. They basically said, if another request shows up, we'll just toss it in the trash. So you already have your ballot coming, so you're not going to obviously get a second ballot, and it's just going to go in the trash, so no worries.
So I don't know what would have happened if it had come and then we wanted to update the address.
That would have been a bigger challenge. I think ultimately what would have happened is our ballot would just come to Washington, and then we would have had to stay in Washington. So
I guess we would have had to stay.
That's right.
You're exactly right. So, okay. So here we are, and we also paid to send in our application to vote by absentee. We paid to do that with priority mail. We tucked them both in one envelope. That was another $8. So we had $5 for each ballot to be sent to the P.O. box, and then because it was like a special service, another $8 for the first application to vote by absentee was $8. And then the problem is that they don't have any idea when the ballots will be sent out. So they were sent out in early October, and they're slammed. So because our whole community, 3/4 of the entire town is like us, so everybody's voting this way. Or I wouldn't say everybody, but an enormous amount of people, many, many thousands of pieces of mail, more than they're expecting on a normal day. So here they're getting all these ballots, and it's totally crazy. And so it takes a couple days to get into our mailbox. And then the question is okay, so here now we finally get our ballot has been confirmed that it is in our mailbox. And even then, we're in the middle of a 9-day road trip.
Yep. So after it actually shows up in our mailbox, we realize that, well, we can't actually have it sent to Washington because we're leaving in a couple of days, and just the logistics of that might
we're moving like a day
not work out. So we thought, well, maybe we'll have it sent in the middle of our trip. So we wanted to vote as soon as we could possibly vote and get it turned around because we wanted to make sure our vote gets counted. So like, could we have it sent? Portland was one of the cities where we were going to be a while, so we thought maybe we'll send it to a friend in Portland so we can go ahead and get it turned around. Then we decided the logistics of that were
There were
going to
no
work.
guarantee that the mail would be there.
So then ultimately we decided we would just have it sent to the house sit where we are here in California right now. And by the way, we obviously had every confidence that we were going to be here and that this home was going to be fine. And but we didn't know that these folks might accidentally get rid of our mail.
That would be a long shot.
Yeah, whatever. So it's like whatever. But we throughout the process,
we just threw away our mail.
Is our ballot going to show up? So we never knew until we actually got here and had the ballot in our hands.
We were so happy to get our ballots.
Yes,
you can't even imagine. And we hadn't mentioned that to this point there are maybe 30 emails and phone calls from April until mid-October, at least 30 emails and phone calls from us into the elections county clerk. So holy cow. And the group was like incredible and very patient and very, they knew what they were doing. But still, this was like just a difficult situation, and it certainly was made much worse by us being on the move. Was probably the word. Like again, it should work very easily. Had our application normally, the fact that the mail was lost made it like an extra kind of crazy situation. But really, the big problem was that we're nomads.
Yeah. Also, it's something I don't think we mentioned earlier, but generally we have no issues with mail ever. 99.9999999% of the time. The mail just works like we put our 50-cent stamp on there and things show up, or vice versa, things just show up like they're supposed to. So the mail simply works. So we, again, don't have any clue what went wrong. But nonetheless, we get our ballots here. We fill them out.
Before, I want to talk about filling out the ballot.
Okay,
so Colorado ballots used to take us 3-4 hours to fill out a ballot. There are many, many, many candidates, and it's many, many pages. So I think a girlfriend said there were 23 people running for president on the Colorado ballot. There are all these ballot initiatives, which many, many. And so they have a lot, and propositions and things that take a lot of research. And there's judges and city council and so many things on the Colorado ballot that it would take us hours to figure out what was our vote. Well, Texas took us like 2 minutes, actually. There were 4 candidates for president/vice president total, so it's 4 pairs. No ballot initiatives, no propositions, no judges, just boom, boom, boom. Senator, like congressperson, so easy.
Yeah, it was incredible.
That was great.
Yeah. So filling out our ballot, no big deal. We basically did that in 20 minutes tops.
20 minutes? 2 minutes tops.
We stick them in the envelope. We sign our envelope, hoping that our signature is going to match up with whatever's on file for us.
And here's the thing, is another thing, is not every county allows you to, so we wanted to have it tracked. So just like we had our absentee ballot application sent by priority mail with tracking, we wanted the same thing for our ballots, to know like if things did get lost, where did it drop through the system? So we went to the post office. We were in line for at least 20 minutes in a very crowded post office.
Before we actually went to the post office, Amy made a phone call again to the county clerk. I think these people like know us on a first name basis. Oh, it's Amy and Tim again. And so they're like, to say, is it okay for us to send this in a single envelope and via something that's going to have tracking? So we asked those 2 questions.
2 things.
So ultimately, we got the answer that yes. And I think when Amy was first on the phone with whoever picked up, she actually went and asked the question. She didn't know the answer.
Yeah.
And so it was okay. So we went to the post office and sent our ballots together in an envelope, in a priority mail envelope, together off to Livingston, Texas.
And maybe 3 days later, we called. So we knew that it was dropped off in the morning. We called later that day just to say, like, was it received? She said, no, we've received like thousands. Like, no, maybe call tomorrow. So we did call the next day, and they said, yes, your ballots have been received. We have both of your ballots. Now, the hard thing is, so in other states, you receive a confirmation that your ballot has been counted and that it is okayed. We do not get that in Texas, at least not in the county, Polk County. So we will not know if our ballot was counted until after the election, which is insanity given all the effort.
What we plan to do, and we had this conversation, so they said that they're not going to open the ballots up that they've received, these mail-in ballots, the absentee ballots, until next weekend, the weekend before the election actually occurs. And so we won't know if they have to make sure that your signature matches what's actually on the envelope.
You follow the instructions.
You follow the instructions and that you've done all the right things. And then your vote gets counted. So we're like, well, if our vote doesn't get counted, because of some technicality, we were planning to fly to Texas and cast our vote in person if that's what it took because we wanted to vote. We won't know until after the election whether our absentee ballot was actually accounted for. And so if we messed something up, we didn't sign it right, or it was somehow something
in the envelope, we folded it wrong.
We did something wrong. So there's still some chance after all of this that our votes may not be counted in Texas.
I can't imagine. We've called and oh my goodness, I'm like nearly in tears at calling them, being like, what do you mean? Like we might not know if our ballot was counted. And here's the thing is, for us to fly to Texas, we haven't been on a plane since the middle of March when COVID lost its mind here in the country. And we are in a house sit. So how are we going to go to Texas and vote when we are in the middle of a house sit? Yeah. So what we would do is, hopefully, I don't even know if you can show up early and do it in polling places, but we would go one at a time to Texas, rent a car, drive 2 hours from the Houston airport. What a hassle that would be. So we were prepared to do it, but being on a house, it made that an extra challenge. And thankfully, so I think that we were very careful about following the directions, following the rules, and hopefully our ballot was counted. We did absolutely everything that we could.
Yeah. So I guess the net of our story is that if you happen to be a nomad and you are looking to vote absentee, if you happen to be a nomad and you are with escapees in Texas,
or period,
you want to start this ball rolling early so that you understand all the hoops that you may have to jump through in order to make this happen. Also, obviously, our mail being lost, that wasn't something that we accounted for really in our timeline of our request. It was a month of delay. And so there's just have a plan. Have a plan. That is exactly right, to try and make sure. Or if you happen to have the ability to go to the polling place and actually cast your ballot, and that is an option that's going to work for you, maybe that's the best thing to do.
Yeah, so you see how determined we were to vote. So I hope that you've voted as well if you're a U.S. citizen. And if you have, thank you for doing that. Hopefully your ordeal was not an ordeal at all. Hopefully it was easy. And what I would like to know down below is, tell me, again, we're not getting into the politics of it, but tell me about your voting. We have a lot of viewers who are travelers, who are expats, who have all kinds of unique situations. How easy or hard was it for you to vote? Maybe you're just a local voter. Are you going to show up to your polling place? Do you have to do it the day of and stand in line for a long time? Can you do it early? Do you vote by mail? So I'm really interested in, and by the way, if you're from another country, I'm at least as interested, if not more interested. How do you go about voting? So super duper want to hear all about it down below. We're voted. Good job, Rutherford.
Good job, Rutherford.
See you next Wednesday.
Adios.